Hello, and welcome to the Music and Therapy Podcast with relationship coach Keana W. Mitchell. I am your host, Keana W. Mitchell, and I am so glad that you are here with me today. This podcast is all about helping you improve your relationships, heal from past hurts, and grow into the best version of yourself, one conversation at a time. Last week, we talked about how to stop arguing and start understanding your romantic relationships. We explored how arguments often stem from misconceptions and unmet needs. I shared how shifting from a defensive mindset to a curious one could help you and your partner feel heard and validated. So if you missed that episode, I highly recommend that you go back and give it a listen. It sets the foundation for what we're going to be talking about today. But before we go into today's topic, I also want to discuss some other things that we learned in last week's episode of the podcast. Some of the things that we learned were very transformative, I would say, in how we can go about talking to our spouse or our partners about things. So last week, one of the things I said I wanted us to try to do was to use I statements, which is a way to say how you feel without making your partner feel like you're blaming them, so that you can kind of cut down on the defensiveness. So what we talked about last week is that if you're in an argument, and we know a lot of times when we have arguments, we say things like, you never listen to me. You always do this. Why don't you? And when we say these things, our partners get defensive because it's like, wait. What do you mean I always do this? No, I don't. Or what do you mean that I should do this or I should do that? So one of the ways that we can talk to our partner and our spouse is to express how we feel, but without the blame, without the judgment, because that is something that makes people get defensive. And now, I'm not saying this approach is foul-proof and that it will never go wrong and your spouse will never take it the wrong way, but it is helpful to use I statements, because I statements are things that you're just explaining how you feel. So instead of saying something like, you never take out the trash, you might say something like, I feel overwhelmed when I get home and the trash is not taken out. Because when you say that, you're not saying you never do this. You're just saying when something's not done, you feel overwhelmed. So using I statements is a way to convey how you feel without blaming your partner and without making them feel defensive. If you're feeling hurt, you can say something like, I felt hurt when such and such was said. Or I felt hurt when I thought we were going out on a date, or I thought we were going to do this, but it didn't happen. So just saying how you feel is a way to better communicate your emotional needs from what you need from your partner. Another thing we talked about, and I asked you guys to practice this as well, is take breaks when emotions run high. Another thing that we discussed last week was how we should ask our partners what they need in that moment. Many times we don't even think about what someone needs in a moment when there's an argument. We're just like, I'm right, they're wrong, and I need to let them know that I was right for what I did, or I didn't do anything wrong. And sometimes it's not even about being right or wrong. It's about finding out what is going on. Where's the disconnect? Where's the misunderstanding? Because a lot of time arguments can be resolved quickly if we listen to what the other person is saying. Now, I'm not saying that every argument is like that, but a lot of the times when we argue, we're doing it because we feel unheard. So when we ask our partner what they need in that moment, we're giving them that space and creating that safe place for them to tell us what they need in that moment. Maybe it could be something like, I feel unheard when we argue. Or you can say something like, I feel whatever. So just knowing how they feel, what they're thinking, where they're coming from, can kind of take us off the defense, because we're listening to what they need instead of being defensive. Like, oh, you didn't say that to me because I do this and I do that. So just understanding what our partner needs in that moment is a good way to kind of stop arguing with them and begin to have understanding. And it's about being curious, guys. Like, if you are curious, think about kids. Like, kids are curious. They're always asking, why, how come? So when we adapt that same curiosity in our relationship and we're asking, why, are you okay? What's making you feel that way? We are learning more about our partner, and we are developing a safe space where we can talk. So as I mentioned earlier, if you missed last week's episode of the podcast, I strongly recommend that you go back and listen to it, because this is something that you can use today. And there are practical things that you can do today to begin to stop arguing with your spouse and begin understanding them. To listen to last week's episode, click on the link below in the show notes. So this week on the podcast, we're going to be building on what we learned last week. So this week we're going to talk about how to listen actively with our spouse, because active listening is something that we need to do. And in order to have that understanding that we discuss, we have to be able to listen to our partner. So when we talk about active listening, it is more than just hearing words. Active listening is about understanding what your partner is trying to say. Listening not to talk, but listening to understand. So when we talk about listening to understand, we're talking about giving someone your full attention. Like, for example, I have a habit sometimes of multitasking, which is good, but I'm not really good at multitasking, because if I am watching something, I'm not paying attention to you. If I'm listening to you, I'm not watching something. If I'm doing multiple things, nothing really gets done. And so I've learned not to multitask, because nothing ever gets done. It's like I'll start different tasks, but I never complete them. So it's almost the same thing when we talk about listening. So if we are listening to someone talk, but we're doing 1,000 other things, we are not paying attention. So in essence, we're quote unquote multitasking, which is not a good thing and doesn't always work. So when I talk about active listening, it's more than just hearing words. Active listening is about being present, tuning into your partner's emotions, and responding in a way that shows you understand and care. So let's break down the key components of active listening, okay? And I do have some examples. So for active listening, number one is give your full attention, which means put away your phone, turn off the television, and focus on your partner. Example that you may have is your partner may say, I had a rough day. So instead of multitasking, stop whatever you're doing, make eye contact, and say, tell me more. Tell me about it. That's an example of how you can give your full attention when you're active listening. Active listening also includes avoiding interruptions. Okay, guys, I'm sorry to say this. I have a disclosure. I am terrible at this one. So this is why I pay attention and try to make sure I don't interrupt people when talking. Because when you interrupt, you're letting them know that what you said wasn't important, or you're not validating how they're feeling. Interrupting your partner is not a good thing. So avoid interruptions. And that just means let your partner finish their thoughts before jumping in. So an example of this might be, well, if your partner said they had a bad day, what you can do is not say, well, I had a bad day too. You actually need to wait until they're done and then respond to what they're saying with empathy, and not talk about, oh, I had a bad day too. Because I think in conversations like this, we can deal with one bad day at a time. There is plenty of time to talk to your partner about your bad day. But first, let's listen to them, avoid interrupting them, avoid jumping in. And this is difficult because sometimes we want to fix whatever the problem is. So if your spouse is like, I had a bad day, we may want to tell them, oh, well, I had a bad day too, thinking that we're, trying to be with them and let them know, it's not that bad. I had a bad day too. But we need to let them talk and avoid interrupting, avoid inserting or projecting. Just listen to what they have to say. And then we respond with empathy and not with what happened to us that day. Another thing we can do is reflecting back what you hear. Now, this is key. Like, oh my goodness, this is so important. Because paraphrasing what you heard your partner say helps you to understand what they're actually trying to tell you. And this is something that is very good to do, because sometimes when people argue or when we have misunderstandings with our partners or our spouse, it's because we didn't ask them or clarify what they meant when they said something. So if they say something, instead of just taking it and running with it or making assumptions, it's so important that paraphrase what they say and then just ask them, hey, is this what you said? So an example might be something like this. So if your spouse said they had a bad day, things aren't going good, you can say something like, so you felt overwhelmed when your boss gave you extra work without asking. That's reflecting back what you hear. You're paraphrasing, you're repeating back what they said. And this is good because if you did not understand it correctly, this is a chance to say, no, 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 that's not, I wasn't feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling this, or I was feeling that. So this is a good way to have those conversations and then let your spouse know that you're listening. Ask clarifying questions. That is number 4. So we dig deeper to understand the full picture. An example would be, what part of the day felt the most stressful for you? So asking them what part of the day felt the most stressful can be a way to understand where they're coming from and to clarify any misconceptions you may have had so that you can hear them better by asking these questions. Number 5, validate feelings. Now, acknowledging your partner's emotions is a key thing. And I just want to tell you, you don't have to always agree with your partner. We know that you're not always going to agree because we're different people, different mindsets. Some of us see the glass half full, some half empty. It's all good. It's all okay. So when we validate feelings, it's not about, I agree with you, or yeah, I'm thinking the same way. No, we're just acknowledging our partner's emotions and their feelings, and we're validating them because they have a right to their feelings, and their feelings are not wrong. So an example of validation could be, I can see why that would make you feel frustrated because you are validating their feelings. When we talk about romantic relationships, they actually thrive on emotional safety and active listening. So active listening is one of the most powerful ways to create that safety. And here's why it matters. When we actively listen, we build trust. When your partner knows that you're really listening, they feel safe about opening up. And this is key to having that emotional safety. They feel safe to open up and talk to you. Another thing that active listening does when we talk about partnerships and marriages is that it reduces misunderstandings because you really understand the real meaning behind the words. You know why? Because we are asking clarifying questions. We're paraphrasing and repeating back to them what they said so that we can have a better understanding. It also deepens intimacy. It helps to grow emotional closeness when both partners feel seen and heard. And that's what we want. We want our partners to feel seen and heard so that we can have that emotional safety that we need for our relationships to grow and blossom. It also strengthens empathy. You'll begin to understand your partner's world, and you will begin to understand what they're going through and be able to talk to them. So right now I have a little scenario for you. And this scenario, I'm going to give you 2 things, okay? The first scenario is when a partner did not actively listen to what their partner was saying. And then a second scenario will be when their partner actually listened to what their spouse or partner was saying. So number 1, before active listening. So let's say there's a couple, Jasmine and Marcus, and they often argue about chores. So in this situation, Jasmine would say something like, you never help around the house. And Marcus would respond defensively, of course, because she said you never. He would say something like, I do plenty. So the conversation has the potential to spiral out of control and to spiral into blame and frustration. That's before active listening. So I wonder how this conversation would sound if someone actively listened. Well, we're going to tell you how that would sound. So let's say Jasmine heard the podcast and she was like, you know what? Keana was saying how I should not always say you never and that I should actively listen. So let me try it. So in this conversation, when Jasmine is talking to Marcus about chores, instead of saying you never help around the house, she changed it and she reframed it and she said, I feel overwhelmed when I come home and see dishes in the sink. And then, of course, Marcus has some time to pause and reflect, and he says, you're feeling stressed because it seems like everything always falls on you. I get it. So just being able to say how you feel can change everything. And I would like to say, in this scenario, Marcus also heard the podcast. That's why he responded by rephrasing, and he said you feel stressed because it feels like everything falls on you. So just that moment, just those small little tweaks, small changes can change the direction of this conversation and let the other person know what is needed so that they'll understand where their spouse is coming from. So in this scenario, after they practiced active listening, Marcus did start helping more and Jasmine felt supported. And they did this not because it was demanded of them, but because she felt heard and he understood where she was coming from. Okay, so this is my perfect scenario in a perfect world, but we know it doesn't always go this way. But what I can say is, even if, Marcus never helped and Jasmine didn't feel supported, in that moment she would have felt seen. And to be honest, I notice a lot of times when people understand why you feel this way, they do their best to try to make you feel better and to comfort you and support you and to give you what you need. So that is why it's so important to say what you feel instead of blaming someone. And active listening goes along with what we talked about last week, where we talked about how to stop arguing and start understanding. Active listening is all about understanding where someone is coming from and asking those questions and clarifying what they're saying to make sure you have a full understanding about what is going on. Active listening is not just about communication, it's all about connection, guys. When you listen actively, you're telling your partner, you matter, your feelings matter, your feelings are valid, I care. And that is the foundation of a healthy, lasting relationship. Now, what we're going to do right now, we are going to go through some coping skill exercises. And these coping skills are practical things that you can do this week to help strengthen your active listening skills and your relationships. So, the first exercise that we're going to talk about is going to be called the 60-second pause. So, in this situation, before responding to your spouse, I want you to pause for 60 seconds, breathe, reflect, ask yourself, what is my partner really trying to say? And then you respond from there. Because when we remind ourselves why we're having this conversation, it definitely helps. Instead of being defensive and angry, we say, okay, what is my partner trying to say? What are they trying to convey to me? What do they need that I'm not getting? And we're asking those questions to ourselves. It will give us clarity. And when we come back to that conversation after 60 seconds, we can ask, hey, what do you need from me? You can ask that question. The next exercise is called the listening journal. And I know I talk about journaling a lot, but journaling is so helpful in everything that we do. It is key to what we do. I'm going to be honest, I love journaling. I have so many journals and calendars and stuff and planners because I find for myself, when I journal, when I think, when I write things down, I have more clarity and I can think through things better than if I didn't do it. So with the listening journal, I want you to do this after you have a meaningful conversation. So after you have a meaningful conversation, I want you to write down what your partner said, how they felt, and how you responded. Reflect on what you learned and how you can improve. And that's the key, how you can improve. Because everyone's not good at this, okay? I know I'm not. When I listen sometimes, I'm like ahead of the conversation thinking about my response. So, of course, I'm not actively listening to anything because I'm thinking about my response. So, when we talk about active listening, it is important for us to think about conversations that we've had, write down what our partner said, how they felt, and how you respond. And if we get into the habit of writing down what our partner said, how they felt, and how we responded, we are bettering our communication because a lot of times change starts in our mind. When we start to reframe and rethink about things, we can change our behavior just by journaling and writing down what they said, how they felt, and how you responded. It will encourage you in the next conversation with your spouse to ask that question, what are you feeling? What are you saying? And to ask for clarity and paraphrasing so that we can write down what they said, how they felt, and how we responded. Because when we are able to listen and know how our partner is feeling, then we can respond in an appropriate way. So that is definitely something that you can do. Another exercise, and I love this one, this is called emotion labeling. Practice identifying emotions in your partner's word. Say things like, it sounds like you're feeling anxious, or I can tell this made you feel disappointed. Because when we are starting to label emotions, we can understand what our partner is saying. Because our partner may not always say, I was angry, or I felt overwhelmed, or I was angry, or I was frustrated. They may not always say this, but we can listen to the words that they're using and then be able to label those words so we can get the emotion that they're feeling. And I have to say, a lot of times as adults, we have a hard time labeling emotions. And it's not your fault. It's just something that I don't think we were taught as kids. Now, I know now in this day and age, when we talk about parenting, parents are more aware of helping kids identify emotions and talking to them about emotions and labeling those emotions. But when I was younger, we didn't label emotions. It's like if you got upset or you got angry, no one talked to you about it. You were put in timeout or you may have gotten a spanking, but no one said, hey, I see that you're getting frustrated. Oh, I see you're getting angry. No one said, oh, I see that you feel disappointed. No one said these words to us. And so if that is you and you grew up in a household or a culture where emotion labeling was not something that was done and you were not taught to label or manage your emotions, then that is not your fault. But it doesn't mean that it's something you can't learn. You can definitely learn that. And how do you learn that? By practicing. And how do we practice that? We can practice by identifying emotions in our partner's words and also identifying our own emotions when we're feeling upset, when we're feeling overwhelmed. By being able to identify our emotions can help us in identifying and recognizing the emotions in our partners. And learning emotion words and being able to identify emotions in your partner's words is key to having that active listening skills in your marriage, your relationships, whatever it may be. The next thing, which is number 4, would be eye contact and body language check. Yes. Okay, now this is coming from someone who cannot control her face or her body posture, which I am working on. And that is why I'm telling you that it's very important that we do these things. Because during conversations, maintaining eye contact and having open body posture is so key. Now, when I say open body posture, I'm talking about not crossing your arms. I'm talking about looking a person in the eye, not rolling your eyes, not sighing in annoyance. Just listening and giving them that respect and making sure that we are presenting ourselves in a way where people feel comfortable talking to us. I mean, you don't feel comfortable talking to someone who's rolling their eyes and sighing like, or folding their arms and looking impatient like, just hurry it up, will you? We don't feel comfortable, and that destroys emotional safety quicker than you can ever imagine. So by just having that open body posture, looking a person in the eye, not sighing, not portraying annoyance, putting away distractions, we can show our partner with our body that we are present and that we're listening to what they have to say. And here's the key: you don't have to agree with what they have to say, but we can definitely listen to try to gain some understanding about what they are trying to tell us. Number 5, we can do validation practice. Now, earlier I said validation is good and that we can validate our partner's feelings even if you don't agree. And I want to go over that again. You don't have to agree with your partner to validate them, okay? Validation is just saying, hey, I understand why you're feeling this way, or, oh, that makes sense. Because it does make sense that they're acting or reacting in this way because they're feeling a certain way. It doesn't mean that they are right for reacting or acting in this way. It just means that, oh, I see why you're acting this way. I see why you're reacting this way. It does make sense. So validating how they feel is not saying, I agree with what you're doing or I agree with you. You're just saying, yeah, I can see why you would feel that way. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Just understanding where they're coming from. That's all validation is. And so what I want you to do is practice validation. It's not an easy thing to do. Everybody can't do this, but thankfully it is a skill that can definitely be learned. So the thing that we can do is practice. And I like to say practice makes perfect because I kind of think it does. When we practice validating and eye contact and emotion labeling, we are preparing ourselves and setting ourselves up for success in our relationships. And when we practice, I would encourage you to practice these things when you're not in a heated conversation. Practice these things alone and by yourself. Do like mental role playing. Say, okay, so let's say my partner, you can call their name, or my husband, or my wife, or spouse, whatever. When you can call their name, you can be like, Well, let's say if so and so came in the room and they were mad about such and such and such. You can even take an argument that you guys argue about quite often, and you can say, okay, so they'll say such and such and such. And of course, you know that because you've had this argument many times. So you can kind of like role play, and you can say, okay, so if we have an arg, if they come in the room and we have an argument about this, they're gonna say da 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 da, and then I can say, and you practice emotion labeling, you practice eye contact, you practice validation, practice doing all these things, and by practicing these things, the next time you're in this situation, you're going to react differently because you're mentally practicing what I would say, what I would do differently. And by having this practice with yourself is a good way to prepare yourself for the next time you're in a situation. You, instead of thinking about how mad you are, how annoyed you are, why can't they see my point of view, you'll think of, oh, they're feeling frustrated, they're feeling disappointment. Instead of rolling your eyes and like, ah, there we go again, you will be aware of your body, and you'll be aware of your body language, and you'll be able to check yourself before you destroy that whole conversation that could be very meaningful if we do not do those things and let our body language dictate how the conversation goes. If we practice validation before we have to validate, then when we have to validate our partner's feelings, we'll understand that, hey, me validating their feelings is not agreeing with them. It's not saying that I believe what you believe or I agree with what you agree with, or that I'm even justifying your behavior. I'm just saying I can see why you feel this way. And that can help you in that situation or in that particular argument or conversation. So I would advise you to, if you can, and it may sound silly at first, but look in the mirror and practice emotion labeling, eye contact, and body language and validation practice. Because when you're looking in the mirror and you're saying these things and you're doing these things, you get to see how your body language is. Now, we don't see this because we're not looking at ourselves, but when we practice and look in the mirror, we can get a better understanding of how inviting we are when we have difficult conversations, or and also how approachable we are. And we might find out we're not as inviting or approachable as we might think we are. So these are just some things you can do to practice before we are in these situations. And I would encourage you to do it in the mirror, looking in the mirror, because you will see your body language and what your body language is telling your spouse, your partner, your significant other. And finally, my last practice that I want you to try to do, if you can, is set aside 10 minutes each day to talk with your partner. Make sure you have no phones, no distractions. Just listen, ask, how was your day? And let them speak freely. I would encourage you, and I would definitely love for you to try one or two of these things this week and notice how your conversations shift. I know I gave you a lot, I gave you 6, but I kind of wanted to give a lot because I feel that when you have more options, you can pick what works best for you. And you know how you are with your temperament, what works well for you, your spouse, what will work with them. So pick those 2 exercises and then practice them and see what happens with your conversation. Now, I would love to definitely hear how this is working for you and if it has helped. So if you don't mind, you can definitely reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram and tell me how this actually helped you. And my Facebook information and my Instagram information can be found in the show notes. So just go click on those links and you will be able to get in contact with me. This week, we are going to be listening to a song, and it's called Crush on You by Landon Jones. And this song is a beautiful reminder of what our relationship can be when we encourage emotional safety. And how do you encourage emotional safety? By active listening to what your spouse needs in the relationship. So here's the song Crush on You by Landon Jones.
I've been watching you from a distance and I like what I see, you smiling so enchanting. I get chills when you look at me. I can't believe that you are mine, or that we've been together 'cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you. 'Cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you. You don't know this, but I write down all the things I wanna say to you. I still feel the same excitement when you touch me or talk with me or look at me. I can't believe that you are mine, or that we've been together all this time. Each day with you is not the same. I get excited when you call my name, 'cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you. 'Cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you. It's crazy how long it's been since the day that I met you. Here's one thing that you should know: I can't imagine my life without you. 'Cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you. 'Cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you. 'Cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you. 'Cause I still have a crush on you. I still have a crush on you.
Active listening is a gift you can give your partner and yourself. It creates space for hearing, growth, and deeper love. Here's your challenge for the week. Practice one active listening exercise every single day, and then write down what you learned and how your spouse responded. You will be amazed at the difference that it makes. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys, on the Music and Therapy Podcast. And I hope you found this episode helpful. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend and leave a review and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Until next week, remember, healing starts with listening, and take care of yourself, and we'll talk again next Wednesday. Bye-bye. Broken, hearts remain, but it's